How could a simple request for my husband to leave early lead to divorce papers delivered at my office? Why did my husband walk out after the night I said meant nothing and come back only with a lawyer? This is how one birthday mistake blew up my marriage, and how I learned the hard way that some lines, once crossed, can never be erased. The candles on my birthday cake flickered in the dim lighting of Romano's bistro, casting dancing shadows across the faces of everyone I cared about. At 32, I thought I had it all figured out. My husband Simon sat beside me, his software developer salary keeping us comfortable in our suburban home. Our 7-year-old daughter Laya was with the babysitter, and for once, I felt like the center of attention. "Make a wish, Ivanthy," my sister Lauren called out, her phone already recording, but my eyes weren't on the cake. They were on Kellen Drake, Simon's old college friend who'd recently joined our company as regional manager. At 36, his divorce had given him a certain dangerous charm that made my pulse quicken whenever he walked into a room. "I wish for excitement," I said, blowing out the candles while maintaining eye contact with Kellen. Simon shifted uncomfortably beside me. "That's an interesting wish." "Life's been so predictable lately," I laughed, letting my hand brush against Kellen's arm as I reached for my wine glass. "Don't you think we all need a little more adventure?" Kellen's smile was warm, encouraging. "Absolutely. You deserve to feel alive, Ivanthy." My mother-in-law, Helen's sharp eyes, caught the exchange. At 61, she had a way of seeing through people that made me nervous. Her husband Martin, ever the peacekeeper at 65, tried to redirect the conversation. "So, Kellen, how are you settling into the new position?" "It's been great. Working with Ivanthy has been the best part, honestly. She's incredibly talented." I felt a flush of pride and something else, something I hadn't felt in years. When was the last time Simon had complimented me like that? "Kellen's been such a mentor," I said, placing my hand on his knee under the table. "He really sees my potential." Simon's jaw tightened. "Your potential for what, exactly?" The edge in his voice should have been a warning, but the wine and Kellen's attention made me bold. "For growth, Simon. Professional growth. Not everyone can be content staying in the same routine forever." "Some people value stability," Simon replied quietly. "And some people value passion," I shot back, my hand still resting on Kellen's leg. Lauren jumped in with her usual supportive energy. "Ivanthy's always been ambitious. Remember in college how she—" "How she what?" Helen interrupted, her voice cutting through the chatter. "How she always needed to be the center of attention." The table fell silent. I felt my cheeks burn with embarrassment and anger. "I think what Helen means," Martin said diplomatically, "is that Ivanthy has always been vibrant." "Is that what we're calling it?" Helen muttered. Kellen leaned closer to me, his voice low and protective. "Don't let anyone dim your light, Ivanthy. You're extraordinary." His words sent a thrill through me that I hadn't felt in my marriage for years. Simon stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. "I need some air," he announced. "Oh, come on, honey," I called after him. "Don't be so dramatic. It's my birthday." He paused at the edge of our table, his face a mask of hurt and confusion. "You're right, it is your birthday. Enjoy it however you want." He walked toward the exit, leaving his wallet on the table. The gesture felt final somehow, though I couldn't understand why. It was just conversation, just harmless flirting. Why couldn't he see that I needed this attention, this validation? "Let him go," Kellen said softly. "You deserve better than someone who can't appreciate what he has." Lauren nodded enthusiastically. "Exactly. You're amazing, Ivanthy. If Simon can't see that, it's his loss." But Helen was watching me with those calculating eyes. "Some losses can't be undone, dear." I ignored her, turning my full attention to Kellen. The night was young, and for the first time in years, I felt truly alive. Simon would get over his jealousy. He always did. This was just harmless fun, and I deserved to feel special on my birthday. When Kellen offered to drive me home later, I accepted without hesitation. Simon would understand eventually. After all, what could possibly go wrong? The next morning, I woke up to the sound of Simon making coffee in the kitchen. The couch cushions were disheveled, and his pillow and blanket were folded neatly on the armrest. He'd slept downstairs. "Morning," I said, trying to keep my voice light as I entered the kitchen. "Sleep well?" He didn't look up from his laptop, where he was typing something with unusual focus. "Fine." "Simon, about last night." "What about it?" His voice was flat, emotionless. "You seemed upset when you left. I just want you to know that nothing happened. Kellen and I are just friends." Now he did look up, and something in his eyes made me step back. It wasn't anger. It was disappointment, which somehow felt worse. "Just friends," he repeated slowly. "Exactly. I don't know why you got so jealous. It's not like you." "You're right. It's not like me." He closed the laptop and stood. "But then again, last night wasn't like you either. Or maybe it was, and I just never wanted to see it." Before I could respond, Laya bounded into the kitchen, her dark hair messy from sleep. "Daddy, why did you sleep on the couch? Are you and Mummy getting divorced like Emma's parents?" My heart clenched. "Of course not, sweetheart. Daddy just fell asleep watching TV, didn't you, honey?" Simon's eyes met mine over Laya's head. For a moment, I thought he might contradict me, but instead he knelt down to her level. "Mummy and I are working through some things, Princess, but we both love you very much." The careful way he phrased it sent a chill through me. Working through some things? It was one dinner, one harmless conversation. Why was he making it into such a big deal? After Simon left for work and Leia for school, I called Lauren. "He's being ridiculous," she assured me. "You didn't do anything wrong. You're allowed to have friends, to feel attractive, to enjoy yourself. Simon's just being insecure." That's what I thought, but he seems really upset. "Let him pout. He'll get over it. You can't live your life walking on eggshells just because your husband is threatened by other men." Her words made sense. I hadn't done anything wrong. Simon was overreacting, and I wasn't going to apologize for being friendly with a colleague. That evening, I found Simon in his home office, typing on his laptop again. A small notebook lay open beside him, filled with his neat handwriting. "What are you working on?" I asked, trying to peer over his shoulder. He quickly closed both the laptop and notebook. "Just work stuff." "Since when do you write work notes by hand?" "Since now." He stood and moved past me toward the door. "I'm going to check on Laya's homework." I watched him go, a strange unease settling in my stomach. Simon had never been secretive about his work before. What could he possibly be writing that he didn't want me to see? Later that night, after he'd gone to bed, I crept into his office and looked for the notebook. It was locked in his desk drawer. Another first. Simon had never locked anything away from me before. The next few days followed the same pattern. Cold politeness during the day, sleeping on the couch at night, and that damn notebook that he carried with him everywhere. When I tried to bring up the birthday dinner, he would simply say, "There's nothing to discuss," and change the subject. At work, Kellen stopped by my desk more frequently. "How are things at home?" he asked one afternoon, his voice full of concern. "Fine," I lied. "Simon's just being moody." "You know, if you ever need someone to talk to, I'm here. What you're going through, feeling unappreciated, taken for granted, it's more common than you think." His understanding felt like a balm to my frayed nerves. Here was someone who saw me, who valued me, who didn't make me feel like I was walking through a minefield every time I spoke. "Thank you," I said, my hand briefly touching his. "It means a lot to have someone who understands." My coworker Dina looked up from her desk nearby. "Girl, you deserve better than a husband who can't handle you having male friends. That's controlling behavior." "Is it?" I asked, genuinely uncertain now. "Absolutely," Kellen confirmed. "Healthy relationships are built on trust and freedom, not jealousy and suspicion." Their words echoed in my head as I drove home that evening. Maybe Simon was being controlling. Maybe I was the victim here, not him. But when I walked into the house and saw him helping Laya with a school project, both of them laughing at something she'd drawn, doubt crept back in. This was the man I'd married, the father of my child. Was I really ready to throw that away for some excitement? That night, I found him on the couch again, reading. "Simon, please, can we talk about this? I miss you." He looked up, and for a moment I saw the man I'd fallen in love with. "I miss you too," he said quietly, "but I don't know if the person I miss still exists." "Of course I exist, I'm right here." "Are you?" He set down his book. "Because the woman I married wouldn't have humiliated me in front of my parents and friends. She wouldn't have flirted with another man at her own birthday dinner. She wouldn't have let that man drive her home while her husband walked to his car alone. I didn't. You did." His voice was calm, factual. "And the worst part is, you don't even see it. You've rewritten the whole thing in your head until you're the victim, and I'm the bad guy for being hurt." His words hit too close to home, so I deflected. "You're being paranoid, Simon. Kellen and I are just friends. You're seeing things that aren't there." He studied my face for a long moment, then picked up his book again. "Maybe I am," he said. "I guess time will tell." Something in his tone made me shiver, but I pushed the feeling away. Simon was just hurt and confused. Once he realized how silly he was being, things would go back to normal. They had to. Sunday lunch at Martin and Helen's house had always been a tradition, but this week it felt like walking into enemy territory. Helen greeted Simon with a warm hug and gave me a polite nod that could have frozen water. "How's everyone doing?" Martin asked, ever the diplomat, as we settled around the familiar dining room table. "We're fine," I said quickly, before Simon could respond. "Just busy with work and Laya's school activities." Helen's sharp eyes moved between Simon and me. "You look tired, Simon. Are you sleeping well?" "Well enough," he replied, cutting his pot roast with mechanical precision. Laya, oblivious to the undercurrents, chattered about her upcoming school play. "Mommy's friend Kellen said he might come watch me perform. He's really nice, Grandma. He always brings Mommy flowers at work." The silence that followed was deafening. I felt my cheeks burn as Helen's gaze locked onto mine like a laser. "Flowers?" she asked, her voice dangerously quiet. "Just occasionally," I said, trying to sound casual. "He brings them for the whole office sometimes." "How thoughtful," Helen replied, though her tone suggested she found it anything but thoughtful. Lauren, who had joined us for lunch, jumped to my defense. "It's nice that Ivanthy has supportive colleagues. Not everyone is lucky enough to work in such a positive environment." "Supportive," Helen repeated. "Is that what we're calling it?" "Helen," Martin warned gently. But she wasn't finished. "Tell me, Ivanthy, does this supportive colleague have a name?" "Kellen Drake," I said, lifting my chin defiantly. "He's our regional manager. And before you start making assumptions, he's a friend. Just a friend. A friend who brings you flowers and drives you home from birthday dinners while your husband walks to his car alone." The accusation hung in the air like smoke. I felt exposed, defensive, angry. "Nothing happened," I said firmly. "I'm sorry if some people can't understand that men and women can be friends without it meaning anything inappropriate." Simon set down his fork. "Can they?" The question was directed at me, but his eyes were unreadable. I felt like I was being tested, and I didn't like it. "Of course they can. Just because you're insecure doesn't mean I'm doing anything wrong." "Insecure?" He nodded slowly. "That's an interesting way to put it." Lauren reached over and squeezed my hand. "Don't let them make you feel guilty for having friends, Ivanthy. You're not doing anything wrong." Helen's laugh was sharp and bitter. "Friends. When I was your age, young lady, we understood the difference between friends and something else entirely." "What are you implying?" I demanded. "I'm not implying anything. I'm stating it outright. You're having an affair." The words hit the table like a bomb. Laya's eyes went wide, and Martin dropped his napkin. "Helen," he exclaimed. No, I said, standing so quickly my chair nearly toppled. No, I am not having an affair. How dare you accuse me of that? Then explain the flowers. Explain the late nights. Explain why you let another man drive you home while your husband, my son, was humiliated in front of his family. I don't have to explain anything to you, I shot back. You've never liked me, Helen. You've been looking for an excuse to attack me since the day Simon and I got married. That's not true, Simon said quietly, but I was too angry to listen. It is true. You've always thought I wasn't good enough for your precious son. Well, guess what? Maybe he's not good enough for me. Maybe I deserve someone who appreciates me instead of monitoring my every move like some kind of prison warden. The words were out before I could stop them. The hurt that flashed across Simon's face made me want to take them back, but my pride wouldn't let me. There it is, Helen said with grim satisfaction. The truth finally comes out. Lauren stood beside me. Come on, Ivanthy. We don't have to listen to this. But as we gathered our things to leave, I caught sight of Simon's face. He wasn't angry anymore. He looked relieved, like I'd just confirmed something he'd suspected all along. Simon, I started, but he held up a hand. Take Laya home, he said calmly. I'll be along later. Where are you going? I need to make some phone calls. Something in his tone made my blood run cold, but I couldn't back down now. Not in front of Helen, not after she'd attacked me so viciously. Fine, I said. Come on, Laya, we're leaving. As we drove home, Laya was unusually quiet. Mommy, are you and Daddy getting divorced? Of course not, sweetheart. Grandma Helen was just being mean. But you said maybe Daddy isn't good enough for you. Out of the mouths of babes. How could I explain to a 7-year-old what I couldn't even explain to myself? Sometimes grown-ups say things they don't mean when they're upset, I said finally. Do you mean it? I looked at her in the rearview mirror, her innocent face so much like Simon's, and felt a stab of guilt. No, baby, I don't mean it. But even as I said the words, I wasn't sure they were true. And from the look in Simon's eyes when we'd left, I wasn't sure he believed them either. That night, I lay awake waiting for Simon to come home. When he finally did, well after midnight, he went straight to the couch without a word. I wanted to go to him, to apologize, to try to fix whatever was breaking between us. But Helen's accusations echoed in my head, and my anger flared again. Why should I apologize for having a friend? Why should I grovel for forgiveness when I hadn't done anything wrong? Instead, I reached for my phone and typed a text to Kellen. Can we talk tomorrow? I need someone who understands. I deleted it before sending, but the fact that I'd written it at all should have been a warning sign. It wasn't. It was a plan. Monday morning brought an unexpected text from Kellen. Coffee before work? You seemed stressed yesterday. I hadn't told him about the family lunch, but somehow he'd sensed my mood. That kind of intuition was exactly what I needed right now. Meet you at Sunrise Cafe in 20, I texted back. I told Simon I had an early dentist appointment, which wasn't technically a lie. I had been meaning to schedule one. He barely looked up from his laptop, just nodded and continued typing in that infernal notebook. Kellen was waiting for me at a corner table, 2 steaming cups already ordered. His concerned smile felt like a warm embrace after the coldness at home. Rough weekend? He asked as I sat down. Family drama, I sighed. Simon's mother has never liked me, and she's decided to make that everyone's problem. I'm sorry. That must be incredibly stressful. His sympathy felt genuine, unlike the suspicious looks I'd been getting at home. Here was someone who saw me as a person, not as a suspect in some imaginary crime. She actually accused me of having an affair, I said, then immediately regretted sharing something so personal. Kellen's eyebrows rose. Because of our friendship. Apparently, having male friends is forbidden when you're married to someone as insecure as Simon. That's not fair to you, Kellen said, reaching across to touch my hand. You're a vibrant, intelligent woman. You shouldn't have to dim your light just to make others comfortable. His touch sent a familiar thrill through me. This was what I'd been missing. Appreciation, understanding, desire. When was the last time Simon had looked at me the way Kellen was looking at me now? Sometimes I wonder what my life would be like if I'd made different choices, I admitted. It's not too late to make different choices now, he said softly. We talked for another hour about everything and nothing. Kellen shared stories about his divorce, how his ex-wife had never really understood him. I found myself opening up about my marriage, about feeling taken for granted, about the loneliness that had been growing for years. When we finally parted ways in the office parking lot, Kellen leaned in close. If you ever need to talk, really talk, my place is always open. You deserve to feel heard, Ivanthy. I floated through the morning on a cloud of validation and possibility. At lunch, my coworker Dina pulled me aside. "Girl, that man is smitten with you," she said with a knowing grin. "Who?" "Don't play dumb. Kellen Drake. The way he looks at you, that's not just professional interest." "We're just friends," I said automatically. "Honey, men like that don't just friend women like you. And honestly, good for you. Your husband doesn't appreciate what he has." Her words echoed in my head all afternoon. Maybe she was right. Maybe I did deserve better than Simon's cold suspicion and his mother's accusations. That evening, Simon was waiting for me in the kitchen when I got home from work. "How was the dentist?" he asked casually. "Fine, just a cleaning," I lied smoothly. "Which dentist did you see? Dr. Peterson or the new guy?" The question caught me off guard. "Dr. Peterson, why?" "Just curious. Did they say when you need to come back?" 6 months, like always. I was growing irritated with the interrogation. Why all the questions? "No reason." He made a note in his notebook. "Oh, by the way, I called Dr. Peterson's office this afternoon to schedule my own cleaning. Funny thing, they said you haven't been in for over a year." My blood turned to ice. They must have made a mistake. "Must have." His voice was eerily calm. "Or maybe you were somewhere else this morning." "I don't like what you're implying, Simon." "I'm not implying anything. I'm stating a fact. You lied to me about where you were this morning." "I had coffee with a friend. That's not a crime." "Which friend?" I hesitated a moment too long. "Lauren." "Lauren's in court all day on Mondays. She told me so herself when I called her this afternoon." The walls were closing in around me. How had he known to check? When had my husband become a detective? "Fine," I snapped. "I had coffee with Kellen." "We're friends, Simon. Friends talk to each other." "About what?" "About life, about work, about how my husband has turned into some paranoid stranger who questions everything I do." Simon closed his notebook and stood. "I see. That's it? That's all you have to say?" "What would you like me to say, Ivanthy? That I'm okay with you lying to me? That I'm fine with you meeting other men in secret? That I don't mind being made a fool of in my own marriage? You're being dramatic." "Am I?" He pulled out his phone and showed me the screen. "Then explain these." My heart stopped. It was a screenshot of my phone records, showing dozens of texts between Kellen and me over the past few weeks. Texts I thought I'd deleted. Texts that, when viewed all together, painted a picture I didn't want to see. "How did you get those?" "I'm the primary account holder. I have access to all the records." His voice was matter-of-fact, but his eyes were hurt. "Did you really think deleting them from your phone would make them disappear forever?" I stared at the evidence of my deception, my mind racing for an explanation that would make this okay. "Simon, I can explain." "Don't." He held up a hand. "Just don't. I've heard enough lies for one day." He walked toward the stairs, then paused. "By the way, someone's coming to see you at work tomorrow, around 10 a.m. "Who?" But he was already gone, leaving me alone with the weight of my choices and the growing certainty that I'd underestimated my quiet, methodical husband. The next morning, I arrived at work early, my nerves on edge. At exactly 10 a.m., a man in a suit approached my desk. "Ivanthy Merrow?" "Yes?" "You've been served." He handed me a manila envelope and walked away, leaving me staring at the official documents in my hands. Divorce papers, custody petition, financial disclosure requests. Around me, the office had gone silent. Dinah's mouth was hanging open. Even Kellen, emerging from his office, looked shocked. I opened the envelope with trembling hands and read the first line. Petitioner requests dissolution of marriage on grounds of irreconcilable differences. My legs gave out, and I sank into my chair. This was really happening. Simon wasn't bluffing, wasn't trying to scare me. He was done, and from the comprehensive nature of the paperwork in my hands, he'd been planning this for a lot longer than I'd realized. The law offices of Thornton and Associates occupied the entire 15th floor of downtown's most prestigious building. As I sat in the leather chair across from Patricia Thornton, Simon's attorney, I felt like I was drowning in quicksand. "Mrs. Miro," Patricia began, her voice professionally neutral. "My client is seeking primary custody of your daughter, division of marital assets, and spousal support. Before we proceed, I want to give you an opportunity to address the allegations in the petition." I glanced at Simon, sitting calmly beside his lawyer. This composed stranger bore little resemblance to the man who used to bring me coffee in bed on Sunday mornings. "What allegations?" I asked, though I dreaded the answer. Patricia opened a thick file. "Adultery, emotional abandonment of parental duties, financial irresponsibility. Shall I continue?" "I haven't committed adultery," I said firmly. "Haven't you?" She pulled out a photograph that made my stomach drop. It was me and Kellen at Sunrise Cafe, his hand covering mine across the table, both of us leaning in close. "This was taken 6 days ago at 7:43 a.m., when you told your husband you were at a dental appointment. Having coffee with a friend isn't adultery." "No, but lying about it shows a pattern of deception." She pulled out another document. "These are your text messages with Mr. Drake over the past month. Would you like me to read some of them aloud?" My cheeks burned as I remembered some of the more intimate conversations we'd shared. Nothing explicitly sexual, but certainly not appropriate for a married woman. Those are private conversations taken out of context. "Are they?" Patricia's voice remained maddeningly calm. "Let's see. March 15th. I feel so alone in my marriage. Simon doesn't understand me the way you do." March 20th. "Sometimes I wonder what it would be like if we'd met before I was married." March 22nd. "You make me feel alive again." Should I continue? Those were just, I was going through a difficult time. Indeed you were. A difficult time that led you to Mr. Drake's apartment on no fewer than 7 occasions over the past month. The room spun. "How could you possibly know that?" Simon spoke for the first time. "Your phone's location services. I've been tracking the data for weeks." "You've been spying on me?" "I've been documenting evidence of your infidelity," he corrected. "There's a difference." Patricia pulled out more papers. Security camera footage from Mr. Drake's apartment building showing you entering and leaving. Credit card records showing charges at restaurants and hotels during work hours when you told your husband you were in the office. Bank withdrawals that don't match your stated activities. Each piece of evidence felt like a physical blow. How had I been so careless? How had I not realized that every lie, every secret meeting, every deleted text was leaving a trail? "Mrs. Merrow," Patricia continued, "we also have witness statements from the birthday dinner where this began. Your mother-in-law, father-in-law, and your own daughter all observed inappropriate behavior between you and Mr. Drake." "Liar," my voice came out as a whisper. "Children see more than adults think they do," Simon said quietly. "She's been asking me for weeks why Mommy doesn't love Daddy anymore." The words hit me like a physical blow. "That's not, I do love you. Do you?" For the first time, emotion crept into his voice. "Because your actions suggest otherwise." Patricia pulled out one more document. "This is an affidavit from Mr. Drake himself, provided yesterday. In it, he states that you initiated an inappropriate emotional and physical relationship. that you complained extensively about your marriage, and that you expressed desire to leave your husband. He said that. I couldn't believe Kellen would betray me like this. Mr. Drake is protecting himself legally, Patricia explained. He's claiming you pursued him, not the other way around. Smart man. The betrayal cut deep. After all his talk about understanding me, about being there for me, Kellen had thrown me under the bus the moment things got serious. This is all circumstantial, my lawyer, a court-appointed attorney named James Murphy, said weakly. Is it? Patricia reached into her briefcase one more time. We also have this. She placed a small recording device on the table and pressed play. My own voice filled the room, crystal clear. Simon's such a joke, Lauren. He actually thinks he can control me with his little notebooks and his suspicious questions. Meanwhile, Kellen treats me like a queen. He sees who I really am, you know. God, I can't wait until this whole mess is over and I can start living my real life. I remembered that phone call. I'd been in my car, after leaving Kellen's apartment, high on attention and validation, complaining to my sister about my marriage. I'd never imagined Simon could hear me. How did you get that? I whispered. You pocket-dialed me, Simon said simply. 17 minutes of conversation where you detailed your affair, mocked our marriage, and discussed your plans to leave me for another man. The recording continued with my voice saying things I'd forgotten I'd said, cruel things about Simon, intimate things about Kellen, dismissive things about our daughter and our life together. When it finally stopped, the silence in the room was deafening. Based on this evidence, Patricia said, we're requesting primary custody of Laya, with supervised visitation for Mrs. Miro, pending completion of counseling. We're also requesting the family home, primary custody of all marital assets, and that Mrs. Miro pay child support. Child support, I found my voice. I'm her mother. You're a mother who chose an affair over her family, Patricia replied coldly. The court tends to take a dim view of that. I looked at Simon, searching for any trace of the man I'd married, any hint of forgiveness or love. Simon, please. We can work through this. I made mistakes, but we can fix this. He looked at me for a long moment, and I saw years of love and disappointment warring in his eyes. I tried to work through this, Ivanthy. For weeks, I gave you chances to tell me the truth, to choose our family, to stop lying to my face every single day. Instead, you doubled down on the deception and made me feel crazy for believing my own eyes. I was confused. I was going through something. You were having an affair, he said simply, and when I tried to save our marriage, you told your lover that I was a joke and you couldn't wait to start your real life without me. The truth of his words settled over me like a heavy blanket. There was no spinning this, no reframing the narrative to make me the victim. The evidence was overwhelming, and worse than that, it was accurate. What do you want from me? I asked finally. I want you to sign the papers, Simon said quietly. I want you to let me raise our daughter in peace, and I want you to get the help you need to figure out why you destroyed the best thing in your life for a man who sold you out the moment it became inconvenient. Patricia slid the divorce agreement across the table. The terms were harsh but not unreasonable given the circumstances. I would get supervised visitation with Laya, a small portion of our assets, and the requirement to attend therapy before any custody arrangement could be modified. As I stared at the papers that would end my marriage, I thought about the choices that had led me here. The birthday dinner where I'd chosen attention over respect, the lies I'd told to cover up coffee dates and secret meetings, the way I'd gaslit my own husband when he'd tried to save our marriage. There's one more thing, Patricia said, pulling out a final document. Mr. Drake has been terminated from his position effective immediately. Apparently, the company takes a dim view of managers who engage in inappropriate relationships with subordinates. Even Kellen's job was gone. The man who'd promised to be there for me, who'd made me feel so special and understood, had lost everything too. And unlike me, he'd at least tried to save himself. I picked up the pen with trembling hands. There was no point in fighting this. The evidence was overwhelming, the damage was done, and my daughter deserved better than watching her parents destroy each other in court. As I signed my name to the papers that would dissolve my marriage, I caught sight of Simon's wedding ring. He was still wearing it, though I'd stopped wearing mine weeks ago. "Why are you still wearing that?" I asked. He looked down at the gold band, then back at me. "Because until 5 minutes ago, I was still married to the woman I thought I knew. Now I'm not." He slipped the ring off his finger and placed it on the table between us. "Goodbye, Ivanthy." 3 months later, I sat in the courthouse conference room, waiting for the final custody hearing. The therapy sessions Patricia had mandated had been brutal, forcing me to confront truths about myself I'd spent years avoiding. Dr. Sarah Chen, my court-appointed therapist, had helped me understand how my need for validation and excitement had led me to destroy the most important relationships in my life. But understanding and forgiveness were two different things. Simon entered the room with his parents, all of them dressed professionally and carrying themselves with quiet dignity. Helen still wouldn't look at me directly, but the hatred in her eyes had been replaced by something worse: pity. My own support system had crumbled. Lauren had distanced herself after learning the full extent of my deception, unwilling to continue enabling my self-destructive behavior. Kellen had moved to another state, leaving no forwarding address. Even Dinah at work treated me with cool professionalism now. Judge Margaret Walsh, a stern woman in her 60s, reviewed the case files with methodical precision. "Mrs. Merrow," she began, "I've reviewed the evidence presented by both parties, as well as the reports from your court-mandated therapy sessions. Dr. Chen indicates you've made progress in understanding the impact of your choices, but she's recommended continued treatment before any modification of custody arrangements." I nodded, not trusting my voice. "Mr. Merrow," she continued, turning to Simon, "you've demonstrated remarkable restraint and focus on your daughter's well-being throughout this process. The court appreciates your cooperation." Simon inclined his head respectfully. He'd handled everything with a dignity that made my own behavior look even worse by comparison. "However," the judge continued, "the court must consider what's best for the child. Laya, despite everything that's happened, loves both her parents. She needs stability, but she also needs her mother." Hope flickered in my chest. "Therefore, the court is granting primary physical custody to Mr. Miro, with Mrs. Miro receiving supervised visitation every other weekend and 1 evening per week, contingent on continued therapy and completion of a parenting class." The gavel came down, making it official. I was now a part-time mother to my own daughter. As we gathered our papers and prepared to leave, Simon approached me. "Ivanthy, I want you to know that I don't hate you. I'm disappointed and I'm hurt, but I don't hate you. Laya needs her mother, even if that relationship looks different now." His kindness was almost harder to bear than his anger would have been. "I'm sorry," I said, the words feeling inadequate but necessary. "I'm sorry for all of it, for the lies, for the affair, for putting Laya through this. You deserved better." "Yes," he said simply, "I did. But more importantly, Laya deserved better. I hope you can become the mother she needs you to be." He turned to leave, then paused. "By the way, I heard Kellen's working at a car dealership in Phoenix now. Apparently, word got around about what happened, and no one in the industry wanted to hire him." The information hit me like a physical blow. Kellen, who'd seemed so sophisticated and successful, had been reduced to selling cars in the desert. The man who'd promised me excitement and understanding had lost everything, just like I had. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked. "Because I want you to understand something," Simon said, his voice gentle but firm. "What happened between you two wasn't love. It wasn't even attraction. It was two people using each other to avoid dealing with their real problems. He used you to feel powerful after his divorce, and you used him to avoid confronting the issues in our marriage." His words stung because they rang true. "Real love," he continued, "is what I felt when I stayed up all night with you when Leia had pneumonia. It's what I felt when I worked overtime to pay for your mother's funeral expenses. It's what I felt every morning when I brought you coffee in bed, even when you barely acknowledged it. Tears ran down my cheeks as I remembered all the small kindnesses I'd taken for granted, all the ways Simon had shown love that I'd dismissed as routine. Real love is also what I'm doing now, he said, protecting our daughter from the chaos you created while still making sure she has a relationship with her mother. That's love, Ivanthy, not the excitement you were chasing with Kellen. He walked away, leaving me alone in the courthouse hallway with the wreckage of my choices. 6 months later, I moved into a small apartment across town. The supervised visits with Laya were awkward at first, but gradually, we began to rebuild our relationship. She was wary, confused by the changes in her family, but she was also resilient in the way children can be. Simon had started dating someone, a kind woman named Rebecca who worked at Laya's school. When Laya mentioned her during one of our visits, I felt a stab of jealousy, but also something unexpected. Hope. Hope that Simon could find the happiness I'd been too selfish to give him. The therapy sessions continued, helping me understand the deep-seated insecurities that had driven me to seek validation outside my marriage. Dr. Chen helped me see that my affair hadn't been about love or even attraction. It had been about ego, about needing to feel desired and special and chosen. The irony, she told me during one session, is that you already were chosen. Simon chose you every day for 8 years. But because that choice became familiar, you stopped seeing its value. I thought about that often as I sat in my empty apartment, scrolling through social media photos of the life I'd thrown away. Simon and Laya at the zoo, Simon and Rebecca at a school function, Helen and Martin with their granddaughter at Christmas. I wasn't in any of those photos anymore. I'd edited myself out of my own life, one lie at a time. The hardest part was accepting that there was no going back. No amount of apologies or changed behavior could undo the damage I'd done. Simon had moved on, and rightfully so. Laya was adjusting to her new reality with the resilience of childhood. Even Helen had found a kind of peace in knowing her son was finally free from my destructive influence. I was the only one still trapped in the wreckage, still paying for choices that had seemed so justified at the time. But slowly, painfully, I began to build something new. Not a life that would replace what I'd lost, that was impossible, but a life that might, someday, be worthy of the forgiveness I hoped to earn. It started with small things, showing up on time for my visits with Laya, completing my therapy assignments honestly, taking responsibility for my actions without making excuses or blaming others. The woman who had flirted with her boss at her birthday dinner, who had lied to her husband's face, who had convinced herself that excitement justified betrayal, that woman was gone. In her place was someone sadder but wiser, someone who understood the difference between love and validation, between commitment and convenience. As I tucked Leia into bed after one of our visits, she looked up at me with Simon's serious eyes. "Mommy, do you still love Daddy?" The question pierced my heart. "Yes, sweetheart, I do." "Then why can't you live with us anymore?" How do you explain to a 7-year-old that love isn't always enough, that sometimes you can love someone and still hurt them so badly that they can't trust you anymore? "Because Mommy made some very bad choices," I said carefully, "and sometimes when you make bad choices, you have to live with the consequences, even if you're sorry." She considered this with the gravity children bring to adult concepts they don't quite understand. "Will you make better choices now?" "I'm trying to, baby. Every day I'm trying to." And I was. It was the least I could do for the family I'd destroyed, and the daughter who still, somehow, loved me despite everything I'd put her through. The birthday wish I'd made that night at Romano's bistro had been for excitement. I'd gotten it, along with a harsh lesson about the difference between excitement and happiness, between validation and love, between what we want and what we need. As I drove home to my empty apartment, I made a new wish. for the wisdom to appreciate quiet love over passionate destruction, for the strength to rebuild what I could and accept what I couldn't, and for the chance to be the mother Laia deserved, even if I could no longer be the wife Simon had once loved. It wasn't the life I'd planned, but it was the life my choices had earned me. And finally, after months of therapy and self-reflection, I was ready to live it honestly.